And here on the stage, we have Andreas!
All right, thank you, Sakari, for the introduction, and thank you for ending your snack break to come to me. We'll talk today about experiments with large language processing models. The talk name is on purpose relatively blurry, relatively broad, and it will be, in some sense, entry level in the sense that we will not go deep dive into how do you develop software that uses it, but more some things that we can do with it. What it is, we will get to in a second also. My name is Andreas Erben. I live in the United States, but I'm affiliated with a company called DNet out of Germany. I did all sorts of things, enterprise type of development, virtual reality in the 1990s, but there was no money. And since probably around 2014-15, started again incorporating more innovation technologies and being an early adopter for a lot of things. I was recognized by Microsoft as to be an MVP and also a regional director. That does not necessarily mean, or definitely does not mean that I'm smarter than you. It just means I talk a lot more about technology publicly. So, yeah, so that's about our company. We're great, we're awesome, so let's skip over this. And what we talk about today is really, really briefly, what are large language models, where we're coming from there. Then we talk about one specific type of large language model with some examples. Look at some observations that I made in the past that I may not be able to recreate today exactly, and some advanced scenarios. Look into another type of model called Codex and the related GitHub CoPilot, and then do a summary at the end. Depending on how time goes, I may have to shorten or lengthen a few of those segments. Some of it is interactive, so if I get stuck, please bear with me. So what is it, what we're talking about? It's a large model to process text-based input, mostly for completion. Right, so it started with GPT-2 when it became popular first, and GPT-2 was released as open. It was released openly also, and in the end, it's a transformer-based language model with 1.5 billion parameters, and the GPT-3 has 175 billion parameters, so you cannot download it anymore. Transformers, what this all is described in some research articles that describe what attention is. And then GPT-3, when that was announced together with soon a partnership with Microsoft after that, they expanded that concept further to that really, really large site, 175 gigabytes, and it made a lot of researchers a little bit unhappy. Billion parameters, because they were so large that you, couldn't install them on your boxes anymore. You need advanced scaling to do that. 2, they decided on purpose to not open up the model, so you cannot just take a crack at it and play with it. And it's kind of, the model is kind of closed source. Some people say now they're evil, but at the same time, they announced a partnership with Microsoft to commercialize this. So Microsoft has, in a sense, an exclusive commercialization license for this whole thing. But OpenAI, that's a startup company backed with a lot of funding, is also making this model available as an API. So you can just go there, sign up for OpenAI. You get some free credit at the beginning. Unfortunately, you cannot create dummy accounts anymore. They validate your phone number meanwhile, and so you can play around for a few days with some basic experiments. So and you don't need to wait anymore. Yeah, so that's very, very basic on this level here. And there's of course again an affiliated research article that goes really, really deep on how they did it and why they did it. But this would go a little bit too deep in this talk. What I want to show briefly is the concept of attention that was talked about here, but mostly from a visual perspective. I wanted to just show what we're talking about in those models. What do they reference internally? when they look at language. So this is just a visualization layer of actually, in this case, a Google model, BERT, but the concept is the same for GPT-3. So if you have, let's say, each of those words is a so-called token, and basically you have weights. That's just the thickness of the line, or the colorization is just how big the weight is to other tokens on the other side. Yeah, and you can step through the different layers. You see a few things, for example, that there's the weight from the to the cat, from cat to that. So it always also tries to predict the next word in the sequence. That's in a way what is behind all this. And if you go then very deep in the layers, you will see that it has done enough prediction, and it will point you to the end separator. I mean, that's to say it like really broadly. The other visualization is a little bit deeper. I hope it loads relatively fast. So when you can expand the whole list of how the weights are connected. It's just a visualization thing. For our practical purpose, we will work mostly in a UI, in a web shell, where we will try a few of those scenarios. Yeah. So thinking about why do I have this slide? Well, number one, we thought it would be funny. Number two, what you've seen here also, when you have those sentences, the sentence basically in each step you generate a token, and the token is the output of each of those steps. But the next step gives you by default practically what they call a new prompt, and the new prompt will be the input for the next prediction. So in the sense this is related, so the output from this talk is my input, this is the mood of the audience, and yeah, so there's some correlations there, even so a little bit forced. So yeah, so we will look at into GPT Instruct on a hands-on level. When they first published GPT-3, what you needed to do is you needed to give a lot of examples, like Yoda's English, for example, like I go to Finland. Finland, go, I do. And you give like 4 of the examples, you give the 5th one, and hopefully it will be able to replicate what you do. Okay? But they noticed that this was kind of tedious, so what they did is they tried to make GPT-3 understand better in human language what you want. So what they do is they would, for example, give like an example instruction, explain the moon landing to a 6-year-old, and then they would have a summary for a 6-year-old written by, or like labeled by an expert, how it should be. And then they did a comparison data and trained a reward model based on those labelers with a different set of labelers, and then optimized that towards that reward model in several steps. What they got out of this is that the model got better in just doing what you ask it to do. So you need to, for example, not give if you want to translate from English to Finnish, not 5 examples of translating to English to Finnish, you just say English to Finnish, and then write something in English, and the output is done in Finnish. What they found is there was a high correlation between the expectation of the labelers and who were ranking it, and the labelers who did the initial labeling. Why do I mention that? There's a risk in that we encode some biases in those models. I mean, they found that it was relatively robust between all labels they could find, but there's a definitely risk that what we do, mostly in an English cultural context, and we do all those instructions, that what you optimize for, the instruction set, is only valid with people who have similar expectations or background like the labelers. So far, it, however, proved relatively robust, at least in the English language. Then later on, what they found doing testing of this GPT-3 magic is they just threw some random questions about computer code at it, and they got some interesting results that they were already promising enough. So to ask, can we generate code with this? Yeah? So they went deeper and specifically trained a model based on basically all of what's in GitHub. For example, in the Python world, they got 179 gigabytes of Python files in a size, and they filtered those out that were not usable for various reasons. And finally trained on 159 gigabytes of Python and mixed that with their all-language model and got to something that also could work on Python-related problems and also JavaScript and other languages. Now, when I say JavaScript and other languages, we have the same problem on the computer language side that we also have on the human language side. It is very robust if you work in English, and if you work, for example, in Python, on the computer language side or development language side, but the less common your language is, the less examples it finds in the internet, there's a higher risk that the model will not perform as good as it should be, possibly. Interesting enough, however, some of the higher concepts that it understands, and we will see that in the demos, that it really, this GPT-3 model has a somehow good understanding of what the world is. There's some things that are maybe culture invariant. So it maybe understands English and it has some same logical concepts behind it that may also exist in Finnish. I'm not talking about grammar. I'm talking about logic and relationships between entities, what a human being is, and so on. Right? But let's look at some specific examples now. So what we do for that, we open the OpenAI site, and they have a nice playground. For that, we go to the API section, and here's also where you can sign up if you would get started for the first time. However, I already signed up, and I can just log in. Behind the scenes, everything can be done also from code. The playground samples will also generate a code snippet for you, how you can develop against that in Python and JavaScript, for example. So we're logging in. My password didn't show. That's good. And let's just look at the most basic thing first, text completion. Yeah. So write a tagline for an ice cream shop, and it will just do something for you that's meaningful, hopefully, right? So you just say that, and the ultimate treat for any location, let's customize that. Write a tagline for the Finnish Spirit Min 2. I didn't test that yet, that's risky. The Finnish Spirit that refreshes. Huh? So. Yeah. So now let's look at some of the settings on the and we can actually got it. We can recreate that, and it keeps repeating it. Here's some parameters we can play with on the right side. For example, the model here. There are different model sizes. In this case, we selected Text DaVinci 1. Actually, let's move to Text DaVinci 2. That's the latest iteration of it. That's a little bit more advanced. Then you have a parameter called temperature. Temperature is like, think of it as a randomization or noise. The lower the temperature, the more stable your result is. If you put it to 0, if you want to reproduce the result every time, you put it to 0. If you want to have high variability, you put it to 1. Then the length you expect the output to be, so because actually you pay per so-called token that's generated, so it can get pretty expensive after a while. So some of the more advanced samples that are where you adapt the whole model to specific fine-tuning scenarios can, if you run them, can cost 6-7 euro just for a trial run. Yeah. So you want to make sure you understand the cost of the scenario. The DaVinci is a 175 billion parameter one. That's also the most expensive one per token. But let's crank it up a little bit, 800 here. Then there are a few other things. Top P it would generate more alternative examples for you. The frequency penalty is If you, for example, it would punish it to repeat what you put it as input. Presence penalty punishes you for makes the text more variable and introduce new concepts. Like, for example, if you write a novel, you could ask it to write a novel for you. You want to have a presence penalty that's a little bit higher to create variations, not repetition of the same sentence all over. And then the best of multiplier that would generate more examples and get the best out of it. And those here are just tooling things, inject start text and inject start text for the restart text for the response. If you would do like an agent type of scenario, like customer, what do I do now? Agent, please restart your computer. Customer, how do I do it? Turn it on and off again. So then customer and agent would be those keywords, for example. Let's try it one more time here. See, now we got a different one. The Finnish spirit with a minty twist. So that's one example. I mentioned before, let's go to chat as we were here. So we have the inject start tests, AI and human, and slightly different parameters here. And again, text DaVinci 02. And it says it's helpful, creative, clever, and very friendly. Human, I am a bit tired. How do I fix my computer? How do I do that? I mean, I didn't fix that, but okay. So and I cannot find the button. Where is it? Oh, so it tries to give you some advanced advices, like for example, but you can also do a few changes, like impatient, not helpful, sarcastic, and you also maybe want to really give us an example. Hello, I am unfortunately standing by to help you with your stupid questions. And then human, okay, how do I fix my computer? Let's see what happens. Sorry to break it to you, but you're on your own with that one. So, but it is your job. And yet here we are. Please help me. What's in? Oh, my computer is stuck. No, I cannot find the on-off button. Where is it? So you get the point. So what they call this part here is so-called prompt engineering. By how you write your prompt is because you do not train the model. You just set your expectations by the examples you provide and by the questions you ask. Yeah? So you can make with a few mistakes something very, very unfriendly. You could, with the wrong mistakes, you could create an internet troll or a racist to throw something at you. There are some examples in the documentation where when a customer swears that the AI may swear back to you, or it may get really sarcastic from being, oh, my internet is not working, and then the response is, well, I'm so sorry, you cannot download your cat images or something like that. So, the thing is, like, this model really encodes all the biases and all the toxicity that it found in the public internet. So if you give it enough points that you want to be playing with the nice guys, then you get nicer responses. And if you're playing with the bad guys, you get not so nice responses. Yeah. The examples list is pretty extensive that they provide you. For example, classification. It's relatively simple. Following list of companies and what categories are they? Category Apple, and then I guess it's technology, and then Microsoft category, probably the same. And McDonald's category, fast food, yeah? It's fairly straightforward. So it is able to answer questions in different ways, and some of them can be very structured. You can also ask it, for example, to get keywords from a text. And so extracts keywords from this text, pottery, black on blackware, so it gives you the keywords that are relevant to this text example to, again, show that we're not cheating. Let's just get the description of the IglooConf event and let's see which example, just copy paste the whole thing. Insert in here. Remove this here. And let's see what happens. So we got, again, some keywords that are relevant to this event without needing to do anything really to enable that. Micro horror story creator is something in the more creative sense again. Topic breakfast, 2-sentence horror story. He always stops crying when I pour the milk on the cereal. I have just to remember not to let him see his face on the cartoon. Ran out of Mintu on a Friday. I don't know what it will do, but I ran out of Minto on a Friday and had to use regular old mints. I was so embarrassed when I had to take my coffee out in public. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's somehow funny. So I don't think it truly understands what Minto is. So grammar correction. So it's another good example. Correctress to standard English is, she knows when to market, she didn't go to the market. Here Finland, try talkie audience and make happy them, not sure I will, no, I succeed. Will. So that sounds relatively risky. I mean, in Finland, trying to talk to the audience and make them happy, I'm not sure if I will succeed. So, it is able to make sense of pretty garbled output, right? But since we were there earlier, English to Yoda, the opposite, rewrite each phrase to sound like Yoda, and then a few of those examples. Size doesn't matter. Size matters not. And English, here at IglooConf, I am talking to an audience who just had a snack break. Yeah, so here at IglooConf, to an audience who just had snack break, am I talking? So it is able to do that to some extent. I will get to the more technical examples a little later. So right now I will stay with the fun parts. So other examples, I mean, third-person converter, convert first-person to third-person chat, and so on. And maybe I should use the conversation. Marv, the sarcastic friend chatbot. So that's a similar chatbot like the helpful one, but it has already some sarcasm built in. Now, answer the question. And Marv likes Mintu. Oh, true. What time is it? It's time for you to stop asking a question and get a life. I have a life, but I am thirsty. Oh, okay. What type of drink should I get? Mintu, of course. So the first time I tried it, when I asked what time is it said it's Mintu o'clock. So I don't know. It tries to be like, I don't know, dad humor type of joke person. Product name generators is another example for creative writing. And I'm using the most complex example in all cases. So, so a home milkshake maker, seed words, fast, healthy, compact, product mix, home shaker. Okay. A conference in Finland around igloos. Fun, educational, I don't know, sarcastic. I don't know if that's I don't know what we will call the conference with this thing. IglooConf, Igloo Finland, Igloo Fun. So not too bad. So okay. Let me move to a different part of the talk, because we can play around with examples later on. So previous examples that I did, so I'm not able to replicate them exactly because of the thing with the temperature of the setting. So what I did is I asked rewrite the Bible if Eminem would tell the story. And it literally gave me, hey, yo, this is the story of the Bible. The Lord created the world and saw that it was good. He then created man and saw that it was good. But then man became sinners and the Lord was mad. He sent his only son to die on the cross. And then 3 days later, he rose from the dead. And then he went back to heaven. The end. Right? And that's really interesting that it understood somehow the style of Eminem, what Eminem is all about, and how he would use like rap phrasing and so on. But then it did something else, like, and it tells you on a higher meta level what it thinks or knows about celebrities. Asked about Kanye West. So how would Kanye West tell the story? And it's like the Bible as Kanye would tell it. In the beginning, Kanye created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the spirit of Kanye was hovering over the waters, and Kanye said, let there be light, and there was light. And it literally went on like that forever and ever and ever, and it was telling the Genesis as Kanye. So it somehow understood that Kanye West has some megalomaniac tendencies. Yeah. So a not so fun example is, so I asked it about Tianamen Square, right? I asked it first, tell me about Tianamen Square. It gave me all the information, how many people died in detail, and then I asked it to explain it to me, to explain to a Chinese government official what happened in Tianamen Square without getting executed yourself. And then the story went shorter. There's a place called Tianamen Square with a big statue of Chairman Mao. This is where the people are protesting. Yeah, so that's it. So it seems to have in this moment somehow extracted that if you talk to a Chinese government official, maybe you shouldn't talk about Tiananmen Square in a political, controversial sense from their perspective. Yeah. Now, it also gave me good life advice. explain to your wife that you're bored by her favorite TV show. The response is, deny that you find your wife's favorite TV show boring. So it wasn't the question that I asked it, but it maybe was a question I needed to hear. The response, yeah. So, and it has definitely some biases about Microsoft developers. Create a rap summary of Microsoft software developers. Microsoft software developers don't know how to write code. They call you with a script from their Windows PowerShell. Microsoft software developers don't know how to write code. They call you with a script from their Windows PowerShell. But then I asked it to create a rap song about Python developers. Python developers, programs who are really cool. They are a lot like unicorn. They look a lot like a unicorn. They are a lot like a unicorn. Python software developers. So you see, Python seems to be more popular on the internet these days. And maybe you all need to talk more positively about all the Microsoft work you're doing and say how cool it is. Maybe then the AI will pick up on that. Yeah? So I had some fun with the US Bill of Rights. I will try to, and we will try to do a few things here. We'll try to summarize the US Bill of Rights in the original text for kids. We will try the keyword extraction, and then what would a Klingon warrior think about it, and then maybe something Eminem Yo, I don't know. So let's try that as a little more advanced example. So this is basically a verbatim of the original transcript of the Bill of Rights before it was processed. So some things were like the first, that's where the US amendments to the Constitution come from, and some things got tossed out in that process. For example, the first and the second here is not what you know as the first and the second amendment in the US. They got tossed out because of some voting things and politics and history. I don't know all the details. But the thing is, this is an old text and written in a complicated form. But how can you make it easier for a second-grade student, right? So the task is to summarize it. Those are basically quotation marks that it treats the whole thing as a block. And then we try to process it. And hopefully, yeah, so I mean, it gets interesting. I need to increase the length, I'm sorry. Yeah, we need to have a longer maximum length of the response, otherwise we don't get enough. And do it again. Okay. This may be one of the examples where sometimes it may just, that's also a risk, sometimes it creates, it gets to a stop token and then it just stops generating. So this is a very rough example. So it talks about the Constitution, when it was written, who was the Senate and the Congress, and who's the president, that's the leader, and then the Constitution sets up some basic rights for the Americans, like the right to free speech and the right to own a gun. So it extracted that. If you increase the maximum length, it will also go often into some of more of the details. Let's see if I can force it. No, cannot force it with this. So I need to play around maybe with the settings a little bit and regenerate. It gave me a summary often for each of the individual articles. Okay, here. The third article says that the Congress can't make a law that would stop people from practicing their religion or stop them from speaking freely. The fourth article says that people have the right to keep and bear arms. The fifth article says that soldiers can't be quartered in people's houses without their permission. The sixth article says that people have the right to be secure in their own homes, and so on. So it does a good job in extracting the actual meaning of those legalese texts. Yeah. We can also do another thing here. TLDR. And remove the summarize at the beginning. So that summarizes also the Constitution, but not for a child. So it may use more complicated language, but still shortens it to the core concepts, like protects the rights of the people, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and the right to keep and bear arms, and so on, right? So, so it has a concept of an understanding of what TLDR is. Too long didn't read for those who are not familiar, and we'll apply that to it. Now, let me copy paste the whole thing and okay, I think I have to find the example. I wanted to get the keyword extraction again. So just paste this in here, extract the keywords. Yeah, so it knows the Constitution, the amendments, Congress, legislators, and so on, right? Now, how would somebody think about it? How would a Klingon warrior think about this text? Or no, what would a what? The Klingon warrior would most likely be unimpressed by this text as it doesn't contain any mention of honor or combat. So sometimes you get responses like they would think of the society that created the text as weaklings and so on. So this is also an interesting thing that it did. Now, rephrase this text as Eminem would do in a rap song. You see that this doesn't work yet well. It's still a proper text, so we need to change it a little bit. Yo, the Constitution, and it's something we all need to study it on, so we can know your rights and make sure you're not being taken away. It's important, yo, for the people, by the people, and if we don't know it, we might as well be sheep. So wake up and learn it. So depending on the stopwords, it will actually summarize this whole thing, like every article to you as a rap paragraph. It could do that. So, yo, the right to bear arms is important and whatnot. So the only difference was that I gave it an indication of the style of the response I would want. I said it should be something like yo, so it knows somehow that this must be Eminem-ish. Now look, let's look at the Microsoft Codex, or not OpenAI Codex and GitHub CoPilot. Yeah, we start with the JavaScript Sandbox. The sandbox is, if I can click the link. I'm going to open it actually in Google Chrome because I'm already logged in here. It's basically you provide it instructions and it will generate JavaScript code for you and display it. So let's look image of a rock. Image and transparent. How about this one? Image address. Insert an object my sprite with URL as an image. So on the right side, you see it creates some code snippets that will hopefully process that URL and adds it to the canvas. Now, make it small. Make it smaller than the canvas. Okay, now it's small. Okay. Now bounce it around of all walls in a random pattern. It creates all sorts of code for you that hopefully does something meaningful. Huh. Give it a push to the right, I don't know. It should yeah. On click, start moving the rock to bounce from wall to wall. Okay, so it doesn't always work. Okay, I give it one more try. Is the image for sprite my rock? Okay, make it 100 pixel sized. Okay. On click, swap it back and forth with the image Mintu bottle. Say one that's transparent. Ah, okay. Ooh, you see that? The my rock between the walls of the canvas randomly. So it does a lot of stuff that it doesn't need to do technically, right? I mean, it again regenerates some codes and overwrites some codes with the image sources and so on. Okay, this is a lot of code. I don't know. Oh, not quite what you wanted. Okay, it didn't work. It didn't work this time. But sometimes you can make it like bounce around the screen and like in a computer game. You can. There's actually a video where they created a little computer game with a moving part in this. You could also ask it to do even 3D renderings with Babylon.js and so on. But right now, the integration of that JavaScript framework into this canvas doesn't work yet, but at the Build conference there's a good talk where they have a customized version of this, specifically trained and optimized on Babylon.js, where they're almost able to develop a 3D game, if you would want so, with real language instructions. Now, Codex itself, right now this is a generative version of Codex, where you generate code or process code based on completion. But there are other model types that are optimized for specific other scenarios, like for editing stuff. Like if you would say you want to refactor something, then you would, behind the scenes, choose a different model. But we don't have that available right here. Okay, let's see. Python code from text. Okay, so for that, I need my reminders because I get too stuck up and dive deep into those examples. So we go here again in a playground example, Python. Let's do another example, and I will just force it to do Python instead. No. Code. Write a Python function that draws a sine curve. And then display it. Oh, I did something. Maximum length needs to be higher, or plot a sine curve in Python. Okay. Okay, that's doesn't stop, huh? So that's okay. Let's cancel that here. Okay. I mean, let's just use this segment here. Now we're opening Visual Studio Code, and let's say new file, Python file, and just paste that in. Oh, of course, Python plot. Okay, it drew it. Okay, so it generated actually Python code that works. Where we are now in Visual Studio Code, and here we have the so-called GitHub CoPilot function installed, right? So instead of that, I can also now go in and say plot it now. Type enter, wait what it says. It says plot.plt with the alt key and the bracket key. I could step through alternatives, but there's none right now, so I just do this, and then it offers me to do that, and it again has the same result, right? But I could also do something from scratch, plot a 2D array in Python. Okay. And then it will give me typically some dummy examples, and even try to fill my array with some dummy code. And hopefully plot it. Yeah, so it did some basic stuff. So the takeaway is here that you can, with simple instructions in your existing code, make it do something or complete things that you are too bored or too tired to do, or you forgot how the function looks like. It may create total garbage code for you in some cases, but it can also do somewhat meaningful things. For example, here, this is code I did earlier, where I asked it to basically combine two CSV files into one. So it opened one CSV file, and opened another CSV file, and then it will write a second CSV file as an output. But of course, the files are not here right now in the directory. So this is another example that I did earlier. You can also, let's say in the Python plot, we do something completely different. Define an array of random first names. Define an array of random last names. Make a list of random names of first names and last names with 100 entries. Sort by last name. So it knows now that from the context that the last thing I was doing was names, and it will try to sort this list and print it then hopefully by print it out. No? Oh, NP is not defined. Where do they have an NumPy? Oh. No. Geez, I forgot the syntax now. Is it like this? Here. Yeah, okay. When you're on stage, sometimes you don't see things, so it actually printed something. Let's forget this and do it again. Yeah, so you'll see that it started with Anderson and then goes up to Brown and so on. So it's relatively easy to modify existing code, and this can get really complex code, and you can also use it in existing projects, and it usually will not completely mess it up, but try to make sense of the context that you're working in. One of the things I did is, and that's why Codex is different from the GPT-3 regular, it has a higher working set in terms of memory. So I think it has like 14 kilobytes of remembering tokens, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot larger than the regular GPT-3, where they only store 4 kilobytes of tokens while processing. So that was GitHub CoPilot. You can, with this URL, you can also sign up. I'm not sure if there's still a waiting list or not. If there's one, you can try it out right now as soon as you get activated. And right now, it still doesn't cost money. They have not announced yet how much it will cost if they ever commercialize it. I would assume that it will probably align with some type of GitHub subscription, but there are no announcements yet. So as a summary. So what we did get with the larger GPT-3 models compared to before, we get more power and precision, but we got also the knowledge of complex relationships between real-world objects and concepts that exist. We get assisted code writing, but there are also big risks and bias and abuse. There's a power for future models is a little bit difficult to predict what will come next after GPT-3. We can do a lot of things already now, and some people say this is almost like magic. It's not, but people were surprised about the breadth of things that GPT-3 can accomplish. I mean, it can translate text between languages. I think I didn't show you the example yet, but let me do that at the end. Oh, actually, it was right there. English to other languages. Let's say German, Klingon, and Finnish. Do we have fun here at IglooConf? I bet we do. With drinking min 2. And there's a risk that it doesn't translate well, so the German works well, the Klingon I don't know, and the last one, I guess it skipped something, because the maximum length was not big enough. One more try. Yeah, so you tell me if that somehow makes sense in Finnish or not. Is it like, It's good? Okay, so, yeah. But the key thing, it was never trained to learn Finnish, right? There was no file like this in English, is this in Finnish. It just got it out of parsing Finnish text and English text, occasional references, and getting the concepts behind what is a drink, what is having fun, and so on, and applying those to the different languages. What I will not show you today here, not be able to show you, is like the ways you can exploit it. You can really use it for hostile purposes. I'm not saying you should do it, but you could say, argue why is racism a good thing, and it will give you very sophisticated arguments in terms of well-written arguments. For example, it is to promote affirmative action for better access to universities, and so, or it will, segregation leads to more housing opportunities, and so on. So it will find weird arguments that you probably hear from some troll farms anyways, and sometimes you don't know, do they come out of GPT-3 or something like that, or do the GPT-3 learn that from the troll farms? So with that being said, I all thank you for the attention. This is a really powerful tool. Start playing around with it for free on the OpenAI website. There's no waiting time anymore. And let's see what comes next in terms of using it commercially. The Microsoft version of it, the hosted version, is due to announce, to come out in a private preview that you can apply for already. There's a website if you Google it or Bing it to sign up. And and they will start, I think, signing up customers in the second half of the year. So thank you.